So what I'd like to show you here is how to use tables to report some of your results from your study. And in this case, this is a table reporting means, standard deviations, and the minimum and maximum value that your participants selected. And you'll see in this table that we're reporting this for the total sample and for two subsamples. So we have this total sample, but it consists of practicing nurses and nursing students. So one of the important things about a table is that once your reader has read about what this study is, they should be able to look at that table, and the table should tell them everything they need to know. So let's walk through that a bit. So first of all, we have this title, and this title tells us that we are looking at these values for each of the variables in this professional role dimension. So we've obviously read their study, we know what these mean by the time we look at this table, but it's telling us, and here we see these variables, so we're looking at these results for these 5 different variables that are in this dimension. And it's clearly labeled as to who these subgroups are and the total sample. It's clearly labeled that we are reporting means, standard deviations, and this minimum and maximum. So notice that anytime you need to use an abbreviation, we use a way to annotate that. And then we define what that means in the table notes. So the table notes can be very important because they allow you to use these shorthand symbols. And here we're saying these minimum and maximum values range from 1 and 7, which allows us to see the lowest value selected and the highest value selected for any of these given variables. So what I'd like to show you is how to create this table by importing a table that you have from your SPSS analysis, importing that table and making some revisions to end up with this table that has been formatted to follow APA formatting specification for tables that appear in manuscripts. And you can read about that either in OWL, but if you have the SPS textbook, the table that I'm showing here is modeled after Table 5.2 that's on page 130 in the APA 6th edition manual. So now what I'd like to show you how to do is to create a table like this by starting with the table that's produced in SPSS. And so you've already had the instructions for creating a table with these descriptive variables in it. So I'm going to go to the SPSS output, and you would have first created a table for the whole sample with these descriptive statistics, and then you would have used a split file command that's described in the instructions to generate that table for each of your subgroups. So I'm going to grab that table for the students. I'm going to right-click and copy that and simply paste it into my Word document. And now I can get this table started by simply adding and deleting columns and rows. So, and sometimes by getting rid of information I don't need. So obviously this information isn't in the order that we want it, so I'm going to start by moving the mean to the front. So I'm going to clear out the content here and just copy and paste the mean values right here. I'm putting the sample size up in one of the headers, so I'm going to delete this row at the bottom, so I have to remember to pick the right parameter. We'd want to delete a row here. And the next thing that I want to do, I can get rid of this mean now because I have copied it up here, so I can delete this entire column. And then I want to insert the standard deviation so that it is to the right of the mean. And now I can simply copy and paste those values right over here. So I like to use the commands on the keyboard, so Control C is copy and Control V is paste. So remember, I want this standard deviation to be in the same column. It takes up a lot of less space over there. So I'm going to add that to occur behind this. And I think that one of the easiest ways to do that is to simply merge these rows, so I don't have to copy and paste that number to be after each one of them. That would be another alternative. So the first thing I need to do is these need to all have a 0 put in front because the number can be larger than 1, and so we need to add that 0. And then we need to go in and add those parentheses for each one. So I added a parentheses here, and if I don't use another keystroke, what I can do is use the down arrow on my keyboard, move the cursor down, and then use Control Y, and that will simply, Control Y will repeat the previous step that you did for each variable. It saves a lot of time. It's a handy shortcut. So now let's just add that parentheses here and then use Control Y to add that to the end for each one of these. And then we want these in italics, so now we can just select all of these and change them to be in italics. So really this goes quite quickly once you get started. The next step would be to merge each of these rows. You have to do it one at a time, but it really goes rather quickly. Again, I can do that once I've done one, and if I'm careful to not mess up, I can just use that repeat Control Y command to speed this process along. And then unfortunately it didn't, these are now on 2 rows rather than 1. I just have to bring this up to the top. So when I've done all of those, the next step is to compress everything and get it into a smaller space. And I want to have these be centered, and I can do that under Layout, where I will go in and will have these centered. I forgot to merge these up at the top, so we can do that now. And then to take up less space, we will use an abbreviation for these, and we can get rid of this last column of our standard deviations that we are done with now. And so next we want this all to fit into a smaller space. So an easy way to fit that into a smaller space is by clicking this little icon up here, and then if you go up to Layout and click Auto Fit, it compresses your table into a smaller space. So now the next step that we want to do, and one of the I want to point out that these should be 2 decimal points, so I went in and rounded these either up or down so that they were all rounded up or down to 2 decimal points. The next step we want to do is to add 3 columns to the right of this so that we can insert our results for practicing nurses. And what we want to do before we do that is to go up to Layout, and because if we auto-fit, we don't have any contents, right? It says auto-fit contents, but we are inserting empty columns, so we will use this fixed column width option. We'll right-click, and we will insert columns to the right, and there they are. And we want these same headings. So we'll copy those here. And we know that we also want to have columns inserted to the right here for our final, so we might as well do that now and copy these headings in here, and then we can auto fit again, and we have our table ready to dump in our results for the practicing nurses and the total sample. And since we know we need a heading up there, we can insert that row above. And we want this row to be for, so I'm merging. Whoops. I'm merging, and then I can add this header here. I need to merge here and add these headers up here as well. So now we have all the data copied in to this table, into these columns, and I'm going to show you how to easily format this so that it is in APA format. For these columns, it's easiest to do the formatting in those SPSS tables that you've pasted in. For this particular column, do the formatting in SPSS and then copy them into your table up here. That will be the easiest way to do it. Obviously, these columns can be simply copied in. So let's quickly go through the formatting part. So we need to make sure that the text is all in black ink. So we go back here and change that. We also have some shading that comes in, so we go to Design and we get rid of that shading. We might want to make sure that we're using uniform fonts. So we go back here, make sure that we've got Arial is a good font to use for tables, and I like size 9. It's legible, and yet it allows you to fit quite a bit of data into a single table. So next, notice that we have this particular arrangement of lines. And so to get the lines done correctly, we go out to Design. There's a border section. These are actually called borders, not lines. And let's just start by getting rid of all of them. With APA, you need one at the bottom. You need one at the top. You also need a line that goes underneath these names of what's underneath. So we need to add a title here. And we just simply need to put a border underneath there. And then APA specifies that if you have these larger order headings at the top, that they should have a shorter line to kind of signify that you have these different sections of the table up here for your subsamples and your total samples. So we can just underline these. We next need to add the table notes. I'm going to cheat a little bit by copying and pasting this one right underneath here, because those are important for telling us what this min and max means. And to create these, I typically insert a type of symbol. This is a symbol I've used, is this cross that I'm showing you here. So we'll do this for 2 of these. And these should be a superscript. So once those are inserted, then we go back here and change those into a superscript so that we have those all cleaned up, and they look better. They should be easy to see, but they shouldn't be too prominent. And so we would obviously need to add those there and there. And voila, we have a APA formatted table.